Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and here I like to talk about luxury beauty. Today we are taking a look at the Chanel tweeds. So I do have a video with kind of an introduction to one of the tweeds, the Tweed Cuivre, which is the first one. That's this one here. But today we are going to be doing a swatch party with all four of the tweeds. I do have two looks for each particular color story as well, and we have a ton of comparisons. So let's go ahead and get started a little bit with the packaging. So the tweeds are priced more highly than a traditional Chanel eyeshadow palette. These retail for $88 US, and we have 2 grams of product. So looking at the packaging, this is going to be the same as a regular Chanel quad. This one here in my hand is 266 Tissé Essentiel, just so you can see the packaging, the outer packaging is exactly the same. These do have 2 grams of product, which most of the regular Chanel eyeshadow quads do. There are a few that have different, product weights. Again, some of that sometimes is due to the formulation and the product volume may be the same. We have an 18-month shelf life, and these are made in Italy. So, that is something to note because a lot of the Chanel quads here in the US are actually made in France. So these tweeds are made in Italy. And again, we have that 18-month shelf life, which is standard for the majority of Chanel eyeshadows. So this one here is 01 Tweed Cuivre. Now, when you purchase a regular Chanel quad, typically it comes with a velour pouch. The tweeds come with a tweed pouch, and it is actually color coordinated to your color story. So this is kind of like a loose knit tweed. It's one that it feels like the actual outer fabric here, if you were to stretch it or something, these holes, the woven holes here would definitely stretch and deform. So there's kind of this not silky, but this gauzy kind of material inside lining it. And you can see you've got the Chanel logo there. So this, makes the bag more substantial. So this is the bag that goes with Tweed Cuivre. You can see you've got beige, orange, brown, so forth. So let's go ahead and swatch this, and we will look at each of the quads. Now, of the 4, this one here is 01 Tweed Cuivre. We have 4 shades. You can see you do have this really sparkly gold shade here. This is the creamiest of the 4 quads that I have. I can't say for sure that there's not some variation in particular products, but by far, these shadows are creamier than the other 3 quads that I have. You can see this gold shade here is pretty glittery, and the more I use this palette, the more you get a little bit of glitter kind of mixed into the others. Even if, and these come with the little plastic tray that can go on there, even with that on, I still get glitter in the other shades, so I just stopped putting it back on. But you can see, looking at these, how creamy they are. You can see how the tweed is going away, and you have kind of that creamy appearance, particularly on these top 2 shades here. So this is 01 Tweed Cuivre. We have kind of a cool cocoa brown. Again, very creamy. It is a soft satin, more like a satin matte, but very creamy in texture. And then we have kind of this coppery shade, but it's like a coppery brown. And it's got some warmth to it. So this one's definitely not going to be as cool. Then we have more of this golden copper and a gold sparkly topper, which is very, very similar to the gold sparkle topper in the Chanel No. 5 palette that came out for the Chanel No. 5 anniversary. Next up, number 2, Tweed Porpra, comes with this pouch here. So this is your purple. And this one is my least favorite of these quads because I feel like these shadows are more like your typical powder shadow. They're not as creamy. They are a little bit, I'm gonna leave some space between these, do 2 on each arm. You can see how much lighter in pigmentation these are. These are essentially all matte. They're more of a satin matte. They're not flat, but you can see that they are going to be lighter. They're a little bit drier, more powdery. And the colors are just a little bit more similar to each other. So on the lid, they are less distinguishable on my skin coloring. Next, we have number 3, Tweed Fauve. And this particular bag here is more similar to the one for Quievre, but it has more orange and peach woven into it. This particular quad is a pretty interesting color story. And you know, I know this is a really, really popular one because it was a bit more of a surprising color story than some of the other Chanel ones. And you can see it's really got great fall shades. This one here that looks kind of brown is actually like a brownish eggplant, so it's more purple. And you have kind of this like deep, more of a rusty orange, followed by kind of like a brighter orangey gold and a peach. So this is going to be a warm tone quad. The quality of these shadows are going to be pretty creamy. So I would say the Quievre is the creamiest, followed by this one here in Fauve. And then the last one, this is Brun A Rose, number 4. You can see you've got your brown tweed here. And this was going to be my favorite. Well, I love this color story. But we were talking about the quality of the shadows. I would have to say that this one here is going to be probably, I would rank this one 3rd. And that's only because you do have some creamy shades here. They're not quite as creamy as Quievre and Fauve. They're a little bit drier, and it's mostly because of a different formulations here. So what I have on my eyes right now, I did not record this, but that's actually this first shade here all over, just with a little bit of the deepest one kind of smudged on the lash line. So that's all I have on my eyes right now. You can see you kind of have this soft shade. In the pan, you can see it looks more taupe, whereas it's definitely going to be warmer than a true taupe on the skin. It has a little bit more of a tannish beige undertone to it. Followed by the next shade here, which is more of your true taupe, but it has more brown. So it's still going to be a little bit warmer. Then we have this soft peachy pink. This is going to be a shimmery shade. There's a little bit, like, it's not truly translucent. There's some opacity to it, but it's not opaque enough to truly build up all the way on its own if you're using other shadows with it. And I'll show you that in one of the demos, followed by kind of this deeper cocoa brown. So I just wanted to show you how the brown from Quievre compares. You can see that Quievre's brown is actually going to be a little bit cooler, has a little bit more gray in there. It's also going to be a creamy formula. Now I'm going to go ahead and share with you these eye demos for each of the quads. We're going to put them on a little bit faster and talk about these particular quads, the quality of each one as we are looking at the demos. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a bunch of comparisons here. So let's go ahead and start off in numerical order. So we're going to start off with Quievre. This is actually going to be my favorite of the 4 quads. Now for $88 US, are these worth it for the actual shadows alone? Probably not. You know, these quads in general, you do have some that have a creamier formula than your traditional Chanel quad, like number 1, Tweed Quievre. And I would pay additional money for that. I think this is a really great quad. Color stories overall are not super unique, with the exception of Fauve, which is a little bit more of a unique color story, particularly for Chanel. But these are all going to be, you know, traditional basic color stories, really classic color stories, which I personally really love. But, you know, I have to say my disappointment with this collection is the fact that yes, you've got this gorgeous tweed embossing, which I absolutely love, but let's face it, that's gonna go away with just a few uses. You can see how much mine have gone away already, and you know, it's only been a couple weeks. So, you know, the tweed is gonna go away. The tweed pouch is a great touch, but I really wish that Chanel had done something different with the packaging of these, the actual black plastic compact. I feel like if that had been dressed up a little bit better, you know, I think that would have made a difference. I noticed that they still used your regular white logo. These are limited edition, which means that they are not slated to return or restock once sold out. So that's something to note. So onto the Tweed Quiver color story in particular. I personally think this is a great set of, you know, kind of those richer browns. It is a little bit of a deeper brown color story. So if you're fair, you may or may not like this one on its own, depending what kind of look you're going for. It's definitely going to give you a deeper look. But the three, you know, main shades here are going to be very creamy, very smooth. They've got a richness that adds to the depth of color there. And they just go on beautifully. They blend beautifully. I really love the formula of those three shades. The fourth shade is the Gold Topper, which is essentially just gold sparkle. And I actually do really like those sparkle shades. I think they are fun to have. I do wish though that it was a little bit easier to keep separate from the other shades, because sometimes you don't want that sparkle in your shade and you just want to go with that richness of those beautiful creamy browns. So overall though, this is definitely going to be my favorite. And I think 3 out of those 4 shades are definitely worth, you know, paying extra for from Chanel, in my opinion. Whether it's worth the $88, I think that's a personal decision. Moving on to Porpora. I have to say this one disappointed me. I was kind of on the fence about getting this one originally. I ended up getting all 4 just because, you know, since they are limited edition, I was afraid I'd regret it and I wouldn't have a chance to get them again. So I did pick up all 4 when my original intention was to just get 1 or 2. But, you know, Porpora, I could live without Porpora. I love purple eyeshadows. I absolutely love them. They are one of my favorites. I have brown eyes, so purple eyeshadows usually work really well to kind of emphasize the brown eye color. But I feel like these are still a little bit too pink. I don't mind having some pinky purples in there, but I would have liked to see some more blue tone purples in there to kind of complement that and bring those about. Really, when you're looking at this, you have kind of this mauvey purple shade first, followed by kind of a soft peachy pink. And then the next shade is kind of like a soft, more of a reddish mauve, almost not quite a plum. It's a little bit more red than a plum, but again, it's going to be a more of a dusty, soft shade. And then we have kind of this deeper plum purple shade. And I feel like these are softer, which, you know, can be really nice. But the problem with these is I feel like they kind of blend into each other and the colors themselves are not that distinguishable on their own. You can see in the demos here that the 2 eye looks actually end up looking very, very similar to each other. I think if you really want to get these colors to pop, you want to put these on top of like a deeper base or something to kind of help bring out a little bit of the color. But on my particular skin tone, I feel like these just kind of blend into each other. This pinky shade, the second shade in the quad top right, it's just a little bit too close to my skin tone, so it doesn't really do too much. I think the first shade is kind of a mix. It's like right in between the third and the fourth shade in the quad. So, you know, I would have liked to see a little bit more variation and definitely would have liked to see some cooler tone purples in here, not just these warmer, pinker, redder tone purples. I would have liked to see something with more of a blue base. And I think having a mix of those in there just would have been ideal. So, you know, and as for the quality of those, I just find this one to be more like your regular Chanel eyeshadow palette, not even necessarily one of the better ones, just kind of like average. So I feel like this one is just not really worth it. I don't notice anything special about the formula and the colors. Again, you know, I kind of covered that. So that one was a little disappointing. Moving on to number 3, Tweed Fauve. I can understand why this is a favorite for so many people. With my particular coloring, I think it's only okay, but quality-wise, this is definitely a great quad, and the color story is definitely unique for Chanel. So if you've been looking for some warm, very fall-like colors, because that's what this makes me think of, this is a really great quad for that. You have kind of that rich pumpkin orange, and that's going to be kind of more of a matte with a touch of satin to it. Then you have more of this golden shade, like a yellowy orange gold. And that's going to be a true satin with a touch of shimmer. It's really, you know, these shades pair really well together. The purpley brown shade I wish was just a little bit cooler than it is. I think if they added just a little bit more blue to that particular shade, then I think it would have given a little bit more of that purple look. But on my eyes, it ends up looking more brown than purple when it really is technically a purple shade. So I think people with warmer skin tones is going to look more purple than it does on people with cooler skin tones. So just something to note there. I think if you have a cooler skin tone, it's going to appear more brown on you. And then we have kind of this peach satin shade, and it's like a true peach with a little bit of like a vibrancy, almost like they took like the tiniest drop of like a neon orange and mixed that into peach when making up the batch color. So I think overall this color story is definitely like a great fall color story. It makes me think of like fall harvest and Thanksgiving and things like that. I think it's really a beautiful color story. Quality on here is fantastic. I really like all of these, and we don't have a true glitter shade like in Cuivre. Instead, we have more of that shimmery satin gold, and I like that. I like how you've got a bit more opacity with that, and you're not getting glitter everywhere. So I think this quad was really well done. If you like the color story, I think this is definitely a good choice. And since it is the most unique color story of the four, if you had to get one, you were trying to find something really different, this would probably be it. And last up, we have number 4, Brant a Rose. And I have to say, you know, this is my favorite color story in general. This is the kind of color story I gravitate towards. You have kind of those lighter neutral shades. I really like this. From the pictures, I have to say I did think that the quad was going to be a little bit cooler in tone than it is. These browns look a little bit cooler in the pan and in photos than they actually do on my skin tone. I have a neutral skin tone. I have neutral undertones with a little bit of cool overtones. So, you know, things are pretty true to color on my skin tone typically. So looking at that, you know, you can see you've got that first kind of soft brown. It's more of a fawn brown satin, but in the pan, it looks a little bit more taupe. It looks like there's more gray in it than there actually is, followed by more of a true taupe, but again, it's going to be more brown based. And I would have liked to see one of those two shades just being slightly cooler than they are, just for a little bit more juxtaposition, because they're both a little bit warm. I'd like to see one warm and one cool. Then we have kind of that soft peachy pink. I think this goes really well with the other colors here. It's shimmery, but it's not too glittery and messy. And I really like it. But again, this one's not going to have a lot of opacity to it, so it doesn't work super well on its own. It really works best as a topper. And then I love this rich brown shade, which is going to be more of a matte brown. Again, it's not flat. There's a little bit of a sheen to it, but it's rich, it's cooler in tone. I think it works really well together, and it pairs nicely with these other shades. You can put this as a base even and use some of these other shades on top to, you know, add a little bit more depth. This works well as a base for adding the pink topper as well. So overall, I would have to say this is a very successful quad. My personal two favorites for these quads would be number 1 and number 4. That's based on quality and color stories. So I'd love to know if you picked up any of these, what your thoughts are on these, and if you picked up any of these but you're too afraid to touch them because of the embossing. So those are kind of my thoughts on the tweeds. I think, you know, they're definitely more expensive than I originally thought they were going to be before they launched. You know, the preliminary estimates were that they were going to be priced like your traditional Chanel quads, and I wish they had gone through with that, but unfortunately they are priced higher. So it is something to consider. And I do find it interesting that typically Chanel, with their limited edition palettes, holiday palettes and so forth, they usually still stay with the same pricing as your regular Chanel quads. So I'm curious to see whether or not this is indicating a change in that for Chanel, because, you know, Dior often does their permanent quints are a few dollars cheaper than their limited edition quints. Perhaps that's something that Chanel is going to be moving into more, because usually they keep their prices pretty similar. Occasionally they do have limited edition items a few dollars more expensive. Oftentimes though, that signifies like an overall price increase for that product is coming. So I'm just curious to see where this is going and you know, what's going to happen with future collections. All right, so we are going to start off with some comparisons. We're starting off with some mono shadows. Let's start off with Chanel. This is 925 or Antique. So this was from holiday last year. We're going to look at this shade with the, this is the gold from Fauve. You can see that there's just a little bit more peachy orangeness in Fauve than in the Chanel. I also wanted to look at this one from the same collection, 927 Cuivre Rose. And this is, we're going to put this down here with this pink. You can see that it's going to be a lot more pigmented than that in Bronze Rose. We're also going to put this over here just with the pinks in the Porpora Tweed. You can see that this is going to be rosier. It's going to be warmer in tone as well. And of course, these two shades are shimmery. Next, we're going to take a look at some of the Dior Mono Shadows. This is 570 Copper. This is a velvet formula from Dior. And I wanted to compare this right here with the Fauve. And you can see that the Dior has a lot more brown in it. This is 22619. This is a metallic shade. And we're going to take a look at that with the pink from Bronze Rose. And you can see color-wise, they have some similarity. The Dior is definitely going to be, you know, more opaque and more of this salmon pink. It's not quite as soft of and delicate of a pink as that in the Chanel. And the Chanel's also more glittery. Speaking of glitter, this is 616 Gold Star, which is a glitter from Dior, and let's just put that right there. You can see this is going to be a brighter, more yellow gold glitter, but notice how sparkly they both are and the density of the sparkles. I would say that's pretty comparable. This is 573 Nude Dress. This is a satin shade. There is a Nude Dress eyeshadow quint that I do not own. You can see that that's going to be very similar to the second shade in Bronze Rose. Looking at these, you can see they're super close. I'd have to say Dior is just ever so slightly warmer than the Chanel. This is 481 Poncho, which is a satin as well. Let's just put that down here. You can see that this is going to be a rich brown. It's going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit, it doesn't have quite as much of that espresso brown in it as that in Bronze Rose. And it's not really going to go with any of the ones in Cuivre shades. The closest would be this, which is going to be a lot deeper. And this is 658 Beige Mitza Metallic. And let's just go ahead and put that right down there. You can see that this shade, you know, it's going to be cooler in tone than the second shade here, but it's going to be closest. This has a metallic finish versus a satin finish. This is the Tom Ford Metal Lust Quad, and I had a request to swatch this with Bronze Rose. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch these together. But this color story, you know, it's not quite going to go with this. Let's just put this right here. Okay, so you can see that this shade here is going to be cooler in tone. It has more gray than the others. The closest would be the very first shade here. Is kind of a blend of the two of these. It's like a darker version of the first shade, but it's a matte. This shade here, you know, the closest is this peachy pink shimmer, but honestly, this is more of a tan beige shade, so that doesn't go. And this is going to be warmer than the deepest shade in Bronze Rose. Now, just so you can see that compared with Cuivre, you can see Cuivre is going to be a warmer version of everything there. This here is the Viseart Cashmere palette, and I had a request for this with Porpora. So I'm going to take these pink shades here. Let's go ahead and swatch those, and we'll just take this like lightest shade here too, which is more purple. So let's put those down here. And you can see the closest is going to be this shade here. It's going to be here, that's closest to the last shade in Porpora. It has a little bit more of that blue base though that I was talking about before, and it is a matte shade as well. Now these brown shades, more taupey shades, let's just look at a couple of these. These are actually for the most part going to be cooler than those in Brunet Rose, but I just want to show you these two, which are a little bit warmer, and you can see how those kind of compare. This is Tom Ford 37 Smoky Quartz, and I did get a request for Tiger Eye, which I do not have that one, but I wanted to compare this one with Fauve because this has kind of that like purpley tone in here as well, but you can see the rest of the color story does not match Fauve. This shade here is going to be closest, but the Tom Ford has more of that blue base, more eggplant purple. This is Tom Ford's First Frost, and we had a request for this one with number 4, Brunet Rose. So let's see where we can squeeze this in. Okay, so here is First Frost. This brown is going to be fairly similar. The Tom Ford's slightly cooler, but you know, those are close enough. This shade is definitely cooler than these two, and the pink is definitely going to be more of a cool tone pink. We don't have this like white ivory shade in the Chanel. This is Tom Ford 29 Desert Fox. We're going to look at this one with Fauve. And let's see, we're going to put this right at the top here. You can see you kind of have some of this peachy shade here is very similar to that in the Chanel. This is going to be a matte, whereas the Chanel has shimmer. So that's something to note. You can see that this golden shade here is very similar. This is going to be maybe slightly more of an orange versus a golden shade. And then we don't have anything quite like this orange or the eggplant, but two of those shades are fairly similar. From Tom Ford, we also have one of the new cremes. This is Rose Topaz, and we're going to take a look at this with Brunet Rose as well. And let's see how these compare. And let's put those right up here. So here's Rose Topaz. I would say that this is probably going to be your closest color story to Brunet Rose. So you can see that, you know, there are differences in the shades. They aren't exactly the same, but they're your closest. I would say though that the Rose Topaz, you know, it goes on just a little bit lighter and softer than the Chanel does. So you can build up the Chanel a little bit more than you can the Rose Topaz. And then this is Tom Ford's New Dip. And we're just gonna put this one with Brunet Rose as well. This is gonna be a cooler color story. So let's just move this to the side here. So you can see here, all right, moving on to some Chanel quads here. This is 384 Imagine Air. This is going to be softer in pigmentation, but we're going to compare the peachy tones of this over with Fauve. Let's just put that right here. So you can see you do have a similar tone, but this is softer overall. The purpley shade is more red, and overall this is going to be more peachy versus more orangey. This is 747 Mediterranean. We're going to look at this with Brunet Rose. And let's see here. Wow, running out of space here. Squeezing this in here. Again, it's going to be a fairly similar color story. Mediterranean is going to be softer in pigmentation on the lids, and it is slightly cooler in tone than Brunet Rose. This is the Chanel No. 5 quad. I just want to take a look at this glitter shade here with the glitter in Cuivre. You can see that they are essentially the same. This is 354 Warm Memories. And we're going to look at this one with Porpora. And let's put that right up here. I have to say, Warm Memories was never a favorite of mine, and now, like, swatching these together, you can see that these three shades are fairly similar. The Warm Memories is slightly more pigmented than Porpra, but you can see that the tones are going to be similar. The first shade is definitely more red than any of these, but I would say that this one is a deeper version of the third shade here. This is definitely going to be more peach. This actually looks more like the peach in Fauve. Yeah. So definitely kind of an amalgamation. This is the Suku 04 Quad. I wanted to look at this with Porpra. This is a permanent color story from Suku. Let's put this down here. And there we go. Yeah, you know, I would say overall the Suku one is going to be warmer. A little bit more of like salmon pink kind of tones in there. And again, you have more of that reddish base purple. This is the Suku 03 Quad. And we're going to look at this one briefly with Cuivre. This is going to be lighter. It's definitely not going to be quite as pigmented. You know, the colors are not as deep, the color stories, but you can see tonally here that you do have similar tones. So if you're looking for kind of a softer, more matte version of Cuivre, the Suku 03 Quad, I think, is a really great choice, and their formulas are excellent. I also had a request for the Chanel Intense palette. This is part of the Light Beige collection. We're going to skip this green shade here, but we'll swatch the other other four. And let's put that one right up here at the top. And there you go. So you can see even this one here still has a bit of a greenish hint to it. This brown is going to be similar to this more coppery shade. It's going to be softer and has less of a sheen. This one here, you know, it's just a little bit more, has more khaki blended into it. And this is going to be more peach. So overall, vaguely similar, but not a dupe in my opinion. Another comparison with Cuivre is the Byredo Disco palette. This is one of my favorite palettes. You are looking for creamy shadows. These are definitely ones to look at. Let's put these kind of on the side here. Ooh. See, I mean, look how creamy these are. So that's the first four. Let me get this fifth shade here. I'll put that right there. And look at that. So this shade here compared to Fauve, you can see that this is more of a copper, less orange. And overall, the color story is going to be, you know, this is just a little bit more of a, it's warm, but like that orangey warm versus this is more of a brown warm. You know, so you do have some similarities. This shade is similar. This has a little bit more plum in it. This is going to be more red than anything in Cuivre. I would say these three shades in general are more red, and this is definitely more peach. That's not something present in Cuivre. Texturally though, I mean, you know, the Byredo Nugget shadows are like incredibly creamy, but they are just a different sort of texture in general. I absolutely love them, but you know, they're different. They're both creamy, but it's a different kind of creaminess. This here is Dior 749 Romantic Voyage. We're just going to take a look at these three here on the left side of the palette. Oh, I smeared that over here with Porpra. So let's just kind of squeeze that in. First shade's really light. Yeah, these are still going to be more blue based actually. Let's try this last one too. Just see how this compares. Let's put it right there. No, I mean, even this, which looks like such a warm kind of pinkish purple kind of palette, is definitely still going to be, you know, just cooler in tone. This is 76922. This is a permanent palette from Dior, and we're just gonna do these three here, or diagonal, because the others definitely don't match. And let's put these on the side here. So these two are a little bit more blue based, but they are fairly close to these two shades from Porpra. These just have more blue, so if you're looking for a slightly cooler version, that's that. You can see that this purple, the deep shade, has a lot more blue in it. And then this is the Chantecaille Cougar Quartet. We're going to put this with Brown Eye Rose. And let's see, where can we squeeze this one in? I guess we will have to go in between here. So let's go in between the shades. So you can kind of see, this is a gray here. So that's not really gonna match, but you can see this is just slightly more, a little bit more red than the one in the Chanel. This is gonna be lighter and softer, but it's closest to this first shade. This is gonna be to peach. So you kind of have similar shades with the first and the fourth shades in the Chanel Quad. And we are almost done with comparisons. Our last up, we're going to go over some of the Chantecaille Luminescent eye shades. So these are mono shadows. This is Zebra. We're going to look at this with the pink shade here. And let's just squeeze it in right there. You can see that this is going to be much more pink than that in Brown Eye Rose. This is Crane. And this, again, is going to be more blue-based as well than anything in Porpora, but it's still a red-based purple. You can see it actually has pink glitter in it. This is Giraffe. Let's take a look at this with Cuivre. We're going to put that right there in between those. And you can see that it is going to be a bit warmer than these. So it doesn't have as much red as this shade in Cuivre, but it's definitely not as cool as the deepest shade either. So let's just look at the deepest shade in Brown Eye Rose with Giraffe, and you can see that they are kind of close. Okay, and this is Lion, which is a golden shade. Let's just put this, we'll put this right here and kind of see how that goes with anything in Fauve versus Brown Eye Rose. Doesn't really go with any of the shades in any of these, I think. This is Pangolin, which is a really pretty kind of soft purpley shade. Let's put that next to Crane here. You can see this one is definitely going to be more blue based. And last up, this is Wild Bronze, which is our leopard shade. And let's compare that with those in Cuivre. You can see this is going to be a little bit warmer than the deepest shade here. It's a little bit deeper than the second shade though. And this one, it's gonna have more of that like satin finish to it, but it doesn't have, it's a little bit less of a sheen actually than that in the Cuivre. So that is it for my comparisons. I did have some requests for a few other palettes, but unfortunately I don't have those. So this is everything that I have. And thank you so much. So I would love to know what your thoughts are on these tweeds, and if you picked any of these up or if you're planning to. You know, everybody kept saying these were going to sell out like in a day or two, but they are still available. They are limited edition though, so once they do go, they will not be returning. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you very soon. So have a wonderful day.